All right, STEM Sharks, we're at the point in the drafting process where I need to take a look at the transitions that I'm using in my writing in order to make my ideas and the details that I have within each paragraph connect and feel clear to the reader. So I'm feeling pretty good about what I've got so far in my writing. I went through and made sure that I had clear topic sentences in each of my paragraphs. And I also have multiple details. There are examples and explanation, specific pieces of evidence that I'm going to use to develop the idea that I'm communicating in that topic sentence. But when I read through all of these details that I've included in the paragraph, I'm feeling like the writing is a little bit on the choppy side. I just kind of go through, especially in a chronological paragraph like this, my writing is just kind of going through and saying, well, in the 90s or 1900s, this happened. Here's what happened in the 30s. Then we got the 50s, the 80s, and then the last 3 decades here. So I want my writing to flow and be more kind of storytelling in that, so it's more interesting for the reader. I'm going to use a transitional resource. You'll get a paper copy in class, but it is a list that I pulled together of all kinds of different transitions, then phrases and single words that we can use in order to connect the thoughts and the details in our writing. So the job of a transition is to do just that, right? To connect the paragraphs and ideas and create this kind of unified whole in your writing. So I'm going to look for ways to create transitions within the paragraph. So between the details, if I jump from kind of one detail to another, I want to make sure that there's a nice flow and connection within that. But I also want to create transitions between the paragraphs as well. So I'm looking for opportunities to do that in my writing. You don't have to have it in every single sentence from one to the other, because that would probably make your writing be really wordy and a little like overly connected, for lack of a better phrase. But I'm looking for the right places, right? So how do I do that? How do I decide that? Well, I'm going to go through my paragraph and my writing here and try to help show you that process, right? So I usually, when I draft, as you know, I will take and split my screen so that I can see the resource that is going to be helpful to me, but also my draft. And so what I did is I went through, and you'll see the highlighting here. I identified a couple of spots where I felt that it was a little bit choppy and where I wanted it to be smoother and have more flow. So we'll start with the topic sentence. I'm going to read through and then use the resource over here to try to figure out which transitional phrases and kind of word choice, how I can mess around with that a little bit to improve my writing and make it clearer. So we'll start with that first paragraph. For the past 100 years, there is a repeating urban legend that alligators are lurking in the New York City sewers. In the early 1900s, there were sightings of alligators in public sewers near Manhattan and along the Bronx River. By the late 1930s, so that's a little bit of transitional language there because I'm kind of connecting that, okay, we started in the 1900s. By the late 1930s, there was a gator captured and killed in Harlem, and then in the East River in Brooklyn again. Something I noticed right away in reading it out loud, I might just add a word here. And then another, I feel like adding the word another there brings me back to a gator captured. So by the late 1930s, there was a gator captured and killed in Harlem, and then another in the East River in Brooklyn again. Okay, that feels clear to me. But here's the jump. Teddy May, a New York City sewer official, claimed that he had seen alligators in the sewers since the 30s. So there's the reference to the 30s here, but I just kind of jump from the alligators being captured in the 30s there, those two examples, and I just kind of jump right into like, hey, Teddy May, right? So I don't, that doesn't feel very smooth to me. So I think what I'm trying to do is connect those two ideas. And so if I try to use the categories here to help me, in these categories, what am I trying to do then? Other than connecting the ideas, but like, what's my purpose in that connection? So there were these two examples in the 30s, right? And then Teddy May, who started working in the 30s in the New York City sewer system, he doubted at first, right, is what this next sentence is. He doubted when he first heard those sightings, or that there were alligators down there. But then he had proof, and at least he says he does, that he saw them. And then he took these groups, of men down there to clean them out. They brought rifles and other weapons. And here, the source is here, right? Look at Teddy. Looks like you don't want to mess with him. So he, like, what he talked about was that he first saw them down here in the 30s, but then there was this book in 1959, and even when he passed away in 1960, he still said, absolutely, beyond a doubt, I was leading squads down in the sewers, clearing them out, all these alligators. So, okay, so why include him is in part because he is a singular person, or a single person who said, yes, indeed, I saw them down there, which helps make the story more credible to other people then, right? Well, Teddy, right? Teddy May, you don't want to mess with him. Take him seriously. He says that they are down there, and we tend to believe stories then. But I think what I'm doing is adding and giving kind of more of an example. So I think it was adding to the fear, right? So I might just use that as my transition. All right, I'm going to go over and resolve this comment so that the highlighting comes off, right? And so I think I want to say something about adding to the fear. All right, so there's these two captured and killed in the 1930s, and then I think adding to the building fears, maybe? Eddie May, building alligator, I say alligator a lot, so I have to be careful with that. Adding to the building fears, I could use of predators in the sewer. I feel like that might get a little wordy. Okay, adding to the building fears, Teddy May, a New York City sewer official, claimed that he had seen alligators in the sewers since the 1930s. He admitted, because I feel like this is clunky, like I need to revise the writing for clarity too, not just the transitional part. So he doubted when he first heard of the sightings, and that seems a little awkward to me. But when he had proof, he took groups down in the sewers to clear them out. So I sometimes, what I'll do in my writing, I want longer and more complex sentences, but sometimes when I notice that things are just a little awkward or clunky, I'll shorten the sentences because I can always join them again, right? It just helps me see the ideas, like what is the complete idea that I'm trying to say. He doubted when he first heard, then when he had proof, he took these groups down into the sewers. So those are kind of three separate ideas there. All right. So adding to the building fears, Teddy May, a New York City sewer official, claimed that he had seen alligators in the sewers since the 1930s. He admitted doubting the predators were down there. Haha, then I can get my word in. Predators. When he first heard. At first, maybe, instead of just heard. Okay. He admitted doubting the predators were there. But when he had proof, after seeing one himself, how about that? Seeing one himself, he had the proof he needed to take groups. I like how that's going better. To take groups down into the sewers to clear them out. Yes, that moves more smoothly through the writing, I think. So I just want to make sure that my writing is accurate. So I have the source right here. So he was dubious, right, doubtful, when his crew first reported seeing a big albino alligator and various gator colonies in the sewers. So he ventured down there himself to prove you guys that there ain't no alligators in my sewers, the book recounts. So after he saw them himself, he had his men take up rifles and hunt them down. Okay, so let me go back. After seeing them himself, I just want to be careful that my writing doesn't sound, after seeing one himself. See, now I'm starting to get too close to the original. And it's in my brain, right, because I've read it, so that might be. So he admitted doubting the predators were there at first. But after maybe After scene one, he had the proof he needed to take groups down into the sewers to clear them out. I think it'll be okay. It's messy, and I want to stick to the point because I know that you don't want to watch a 45-minute video of Mrs. Smale hashing through her writing. But I'm not 100% happy with that. So I might, again, guys, because writing is a messy process sometimes, I might revisit. Change the wording up from the original. And I'll put check the source to remind me why, right? I was feeling that might be a little too close to the original. So I'm going to keep going to focus on the transitions, right? Okay, so into the late 50s, he told stories of what he saw and verified that the alligators were down there. So this into the late 50s is fine, I guess, for a transition, but I'm feeling like in the early 1900s, by the late 1930s, I'm being kind of repetitive with that language. It's a little simple, and I want to mix it up. So I think what I want to do is to emphasize what he's doing, like that he's stuck by his story, right? So like this, without a doubt, and undeniably, absolutely, emphatically, right? like he forever stuck with his story. I want something that's going to emphasize, which maybe the in fact right here would work. Let me try it out. So in fact, yes. In fact, told stories of, okay. So in fact, he verified, he told stories verifying. Oh, told stories up until his death in 1960. Okay. In fact, he told stories up until his death, because that emphasizes, right? He stuck by his story. His death in 1960. In fact, he told stories up until his death in 1960 that the alligators, and there was something about him clearing them out, right? He led a squad down there. There ain't no alligators in my sewers. Okay. I'm rereading the word choice here to make sure that I don't steal words from the original just because it's fresh in my brain. So in fact, he told stories up until his death in 1960 that the alligators were down there. But oops. So I can take off this. Maybe I'm trying to think about what am I trying to communicate here? That he stuck by his story is what I think the impressive part to me. And so I'm getting too wordy and I want to take that out. So, but after scene one, he had the proof he needed to take his men. How about that? His team, his sewer team. I don't know, I say sewer a lot. Okay, to take his team down into the sewers to clear them out. In fact, he stuck by his story up into his, he stuck by his, he insisted the alligators by his story. In fact, he stuck by his story that the alligators, I'm going to move this, that the alligators were down there up until his death in 1960. Yes. Okay. I think in rereading that, all right, adding to the building fears, Teddy May, a New York City sewer official, claimed that he had seen the alligators in the sewers since the 1930s. He admitted doubting the predators were there at first, but after seeing one, he had the proof he needed to take his team down into the sewers to clear them out. In fact, he stuck by his story that the alligators were down there up until his death in 1960. Okay, so the 1980s brought another sighting. I think I want to use some more transitional language so that I'm mixing up the beginning of that sentence again. Part of what's going to make the writing seem really choppy is if I have the same sentence structure over and over again, which is what I'm noticing, right, in the early 1900s, by the late 1930s. So I'm working to take that out. So adding a transition in there could help. And so I'm continuing to give more examples. So I think I might have something and add to, right? I'm doing that as well. So furthermore, or in addition, that would work, right? Okay, so in addition, and because I say the 19, I think I need to be consistent with that and not just say the 80s. So in addition, the 1980s brought another sighting in a reservoir in Westchester County. Sorry, I paused because my brain was thinking about the another sighting, and I don't want my word choice to be too repetitive in here of sighting, sighting, sighting. So I might hop over to dictionary.com and look up some synonyms for sighting. Brought another alligator sighting. Okay, I'm going to leave it for now so I stay focused on the transitions. But again, I'm going to leave a note to myself to check that repetitive wording later. Do it. Here we go. Brought another sighting in a reservoir in Westchester County, but the alligator was captured and given to the Bronx Zoo. In the 1980s, again, right? So I think instead, maybe, so what's happening here in my writing is there's this other New York City sewer chief who says, no, it's not true. They're not down there. So instead, I'm going to resolve that repetitive word choice and I'll clean it up. I'm going to show exception, I think, like by contrast, right? That it's like, despite the fact that Teddy stuck to his story, and yeah, the 1980s brought another example of an alligator finding, but I think I'm gonna use nevertheless here. So here's how I want that to look. And then, so if it's the 1980s, that's the New York City sewer chief of the time, right? So New York City sewer chief at the time confirmed this, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. Nevertheless, the New York City sewer chief at the time confirmed this urban legend is not true. See how that goes. In addition, the 1980s brought another sighting in a reservoir in Westchester County, but the alligator was captured and given to the Bronx Zoo. Nevertheless, the New York City sewer chief at the time publicly confirmed. He had to come out like, oh, hey, there's another alligator. They're living down there. I'm certain of it, right? So the rumors start, the legend resurfaces. So nevertheless, the New York City sewer chief at the time publicly confirmed this urban legend is not true. Even in the last 3 decades, there were reports of alligators lost in New York area streets and water bodies, keeping the legend alive. All right, because the last little bit that I'm adding here, I'm trying to show in this paragraph that despite the fact that there was sighting after sighting after sighting, and even Teddy May, who's claiming, yes, indeed, they're down there, I take my men down there and we clear them out, it's not true. Like, they can't live down there. And if I look at the details, right, that where are they found, they're not found down in the channels like the sewers under the city. They're found in the public waterways. So there might be one in a river, right, where someone had discarded that pet when it got too big, but they're not actually living down in the sewer system, like lurking down there and breeding down there. So even the last 3 decades, there were reports of alligators lost in the streets, right, and different water bodies in New York, which kept the legend alive. Okay, so what I want to do next then is connect that idea, like keeping this legend alive. And I want to connect it to the fact that the story is simple and consistently states that the alligators prowl the sewers in the belly of the city. So that topic sentence right there is, there are only a little kind of details that get added or changed to these different versions of the story. But I think that's partly the power behind this legend, is the fact that there's just enough of it to be believable. And so it just keeps, every time an alligator is found as a discarded pet, then the legend just resurfaces and everybody's talking about how they're down in the sewers. See, I told you, my great great uncle, Teddy May, he was right. So I want to build on that idea, right? Even in the last 3 decades, there were reports of alligators lost in New York area streets and water bodies, keeping this legend alive. So I checked through some of the transitional language here, and I want to contrast, I think, like compare and contrast. So I'm looking for some word choice that will help me. And so I don't see, like, on the other hand, the story is simple and consistently states. That's not working for me. Maybe on the contrary, but that doesn't. On the contrary, I need something before that that says that the story is really elaborate and has all kinds of versions. And so that doesn't work. That's not what I'm trying to say. So maybe showing exception. Which this word despite, that might help me, because despite the persistence of the legend, right? Yeah, maybe I could say something like that. Okay, so despite persistence the story continues because it is simple and consistently states. See if that works. Okay, despite the persistence of the legend, because it stays alive over and over, right? So despite the persistence of the legend. So I'm using some transitional language here to connect it to the idea before it. Okay. Despite the persistence of the legend, the story continues because it is simple and consistently states that alligators prowl the sewers in the belly of the city. Yes, that feels better. I like that. So some of the versions I came across had variations on the specific details, such as, right? So that's some transitional language, because now I'm going to give an example, right? Such as the alligators were mutated into albinos due to the lack of light and that they were enormous in size. Here's that note for adding evidence. You'll see that in the next video. And so I'm feeling pretty good about, I'm going to keep going, but I'm hoping that you've got the idea. So what I'm looking for are repeated sentence structures, because transitions work really well when they're added right in the beginning of that sentence. And so I can change up that choppy sentence structure that repeats by choosing some transitional language, right, to connect those ideas and change up the sentence structure then, like I did in here, right, adding to the building fears. And then this in addition, that helped me have more interesting sentence structure, but also helped to show how these details were building to a bigger story and up until modern times, right? Took you right through the chronological order of that. And then I checked to make sure that I had some transitional language here to connect the ending idea of this paragraph to the next paragraph. All right, so you can check back in on my draft here later and see how I did with the rest of my writing. But I think that will do it for now. I'm going to keep going. You go ahead and get started on your drafting and making sure you are looking for transitions to help make the flow of thoughts in your writing clear to your reader. All right, good luck, and make sure you ask for help when you need it.